Welcome, everybody, to How to Create Garden Beds. My name is Joe Cobb. I'm your host for this adventure. Let's get started. I got so much information to cover with you. Now, folks, my grandmother was a florist, and I live for creating garden beds and lawn beds, and I want to share that information with you. So, what are we going to cover today? Well, we're going to talk about garden beds, right? The different types of garden beds, raised beds. We're going to tell you basically how to set those up. We're going to talk to you about specific plants for gardens, whether it's flowers or vegetables. And then we're going to talk to you a little bit about caring for your plants, some things you can do, everything from raising from seedlings, some hacks you can do with materials that you have around the house. A lot of great information for you. So I want to jump in. Now, let's start off with all the beds that we're very familiar with. We're very familiar with lawn beds, right? These are things that are typically around the house, maybe around a tree, which is a great place to have them because there are many types of grass that do not grow well in the shade, right? Bermuda is one of those. So if you have a big, huge tree, you're never going to grow grass underneath that tree. You can either trim the tree back or expand that lawn bed around it. So those are really, really popular. Maybe around the mailbox. Those are great areas to have them as well. We cover a lot of those things in Curb Appeal, our Curb Appeal workshop, which really lets people know where are some great places to put these. And it gives you some parameters about where you should plant things, right? You want to keep many of these plants, at least 5 to 15 feet away from the house, especially those that get extremely large. Just depends on the plant. You can do a lot of seasonal plants in these areas. So a lot of people are familiar with lawn beds and garden beds. But maybe you have an area that you've never touched. Maybe you have that area that you've never put in a lawn bed or a garden bed. How do you do it? Where do you start? Well, I'm going to help you out with that. Let me talk to you about creating a lawn bed basically from scratch, right? So if you're wanting to do an area like me, my wife and I, we love growing our own summertime vegetables. So we create a garden bed in our backyard. Now, this is key. Depending on what you want to grow and what you want to plant, that determines the area you want to choose. So if you're going to grow vegetables and if you're going to have a summertime garden, you want to pick a spot that really gets good optimal sunlight because that's going to help with growth. Okay. Maybe if you have an area around that tree and it's not, the grass is dying out, you want to plant some plants there and some greenery. That's fine. Choose plants that do well in shade, which there are plenty of them. You can get perennials and annuals and a bunch of different plants. Now, we'll go ahead and tell you, we always get questions about tulips. Like, so when do I plant tulip bulbs? Well, you plant tulip bulbs in the fall. That's when you plant them. So if it's the spring and you're getting ready for gardening, tulip bulbs should not be planted right now. You're going to have to get tulips that are already grown and transplant those. We'll talk about transplanting plants, in just a few. So when you figure out that area, depending on what you need, a couple things you want to do. First off, you want to outline that area. I'll show you how to do this in just a second. And then with a shovel or a pickaxe or a lot of other tools, you kind of make an outline of that area. And then some people use borders. You can use a very flexible border, which is extremely popular, right? You don't have to use a border. I'll show you how to just use basically the ground that you have to do that as well. You can use metal borders, plastic borders. You can use a hula hoop, really, if you want to just design the area. But what if I just show you how to do this? I think that's a great idea.
A colorful garden is great in spring, but what about the rest of the year? Here's how to build a low-maintenance walled garden bed that keeps its colors for 3 seasons. Pick a spot that gets lots of sun to promote plant growth. Experiment with design sizes and shapes by laying out a garden hose, rope, or some powdered chalk. Remove the top layer of turf and relocate it or flip it upside down to create compost material. Break up the soil beneath and remove the large rocks. Level and smooth the area where the wall blocks will go. Apply a 1-inch layer of leveling sand or paver base and stack the blocks to build your wall to the desired height. Be sure and check your level as you go. When your wall is complete, fill the space with premixed garden soil. As far as what flowers to add, it's totally up to you and dependent on where you live. Just be sure and choose flowers that bloom at different times of the year to ensure you have color well beyond spring. Here are some of the plants we use to fill out our colorful 3-season garden bed. Daylilies, Asiatic lilies, salvia, roses, daisies, and phlox. For more detailed information on this and many other popular projects, check out the DIY projects and ideas section of homedepot.com or talk to one of our store associates. Good luck and thanks for shopping at the Home Depot.
So building a garden bed isn't that difficult. What if you don't want to use a garden bed? Maybe you live in a townhome. Maybe you have a patio, okay? Well, there are plenty of containers that you can do a lot of the same things. Containers are great for plants, especially things like smaller plants with herbs, anything with like a pop of color. They're phenomenal. Let me show you a couple of containers. So one of the ones I love, always love my terracotta or my clay pots. If you have kids, these are great. You can actually paint them. You can actually paint these. My daughter used to do this when she was younger, and it helped us identify what seeds we had in. Can you guess what plant that we started off in there? Yeah, it was a watermelon. Other things that you can do if you're limited in area, you can take these terracotta plants. This is an old curtain hanger, right? And we just literally I've literally just duct taped it back to that. That duct tape worked pretty good. You can actually glue it. You can actually hang these on mesh, right? So you can actually have these plants that come out and spill over on the side. So containers are key. Now, if you're using a bigger container, something like this, these are phenomenal. I'm going to show you something though. Many of these containers, notice that there are no holes in the bottom of that. And there are places, it literally will tell you right here, drill holes, right? Drill holes. Or you may actually have a plug which you can actually drill through to the bottom of it. Most plants do need drainage. If you're using a planter like this, you want to make sure that that water is able to drain out, because the soil is only going to absorb so much water, and then the rest is going to sit there. And if it doesn't drain out or evaporate, it's going to lead to rot. It's going to actually cause problems for your plants. Number one problem people typically do when they're growing plants, what they either overwater or underwater. So it's a fine skill, which we'll talk about in just a few moments. Other containers that you can use. You can use large ones, multi-raised level beds. I'll show you that in just a second. You can do things like this. You can actually build your own, right? I mean, this literally is just, I mean, you can just say, these are just kind of like brad nailed together into two little pieces of wood that I cut out, right? So you can actually put planters inside of this. You can actually have something like this that's solid and put a plant inside it that actually drains water, right? And it'll take care of it. So you can build your different types of planters. And then there are kits. I'll show you those in just a few moments. Multi-raised level beds can be combined in a lot of different areas. Just know this. Whenever you're using a kit, and you'll see this in just a few moments, the taller it is, the deeper it is, the more expensive it's going to be. Not for the actual kit, but for the amount of soil you have to put in that. Because a raised bed typically is raised off of the ground. So you're going to actually have to add a lot of soil to that. So just keep that in mind as you're buying these, okay? Vertical raised beds are great. Again, you can do these in terracotta pots. You can actually do these in planters. All it is just, it's a stand that will hold plants on different levels. Really easy, beautiful. Now, I will tell you that vertical raised beds, you're going to be limited what you can grow in that. You can't grow tomato plants in something like that because tomato plants, they get extremely tall, right? So you're going to need tomato cages. So if you're going to grow a tomato plant, and you're going to have to use a tomato cage because the vines will grab onto this and grow up. If you're going to use something like that, I don't recommend a vertical bed, But you can do something like mesh like this. You'll see me refer to this again in just a few moments. So you can do something like with a mesh for your vertical plants or for your tomato plants that grow extremely high. Or this is one of my favorite things right here. This is actually a large, I love the look of this, right? They're relatively cheap. Again, you drill holes in the bottom. These are great for growing tomato plants, especially on decks and or balconies. How do I know? Because this is exactly what we do. Our tomato plants do better on our deck and not out in our garden. So vertical raised beds are great, but you are going to be limited to what you can grow on that. So herbs, flowers, pansies, lighter flowers are typically going to be best for vertical raised beds. Now, raised bed kits. You heard me talk about this. I'll show you some in just a second. Raised bed kits look a lot like this. This actually is the one you'll see in the video in just a second. This is actually made out of cedar. Now, cedar is great because it is rot resistant. That means it'll weather nicely. And you can kind of see all these are, I'll move that one right there. These are boards that slide into these cedar blocks of wood. And all these blocks do are just sit on the ground. That's all they do. Now, you can use something, you can go rent an alder, something like this, and drill down if you want big, huge posts. You can make your own. But all you want to keep in mind is you just want to put slots into a little tiny post like this. I do, again, recommend cedar because they're rot resistant, especially if they're touching the ground. And remember, you got a lot of water and things like this. So these raised bed kits are phenomenal. And you can see right here, you can put several boards in one of these as well. But remember what Joe told you, the more boards you put in, the deeper this is, the more soil you're going to actually have to buy and put in that, which is going to increase the cost of your raised garden bed. That is the biggest pitfall I see when people build a raised garden bed. They're like, I'm going to make this thing 3 feet tall. It's going to scoop around everything. That's great. And then they realize they've got to buy $1,000 worth of topsoil and garden soil. So keep that in mind. Now, you can get these kits with doors. You can get these kits with fencing that keep out deer and rabbits and things like that. You can see these actually just kind of stick down in the ground. I will tell you, if you buy any of these kits, though, put the hammer away. Do not use a hammer on any of these things. What you want to use is just a simple mallet. If you don't have a mallet, grab one because it's going to be soft to the wood. It's not going to damage the wood. If you try to put one of those into the ground using a hammer, you're going to have problems. If your ground's too hard for these to be inserted, then do some digging, do some trenching with a shovel, find a way. But it shouldn't be, because this should be loose soil that you've put into some of these kits. So one of the things we like to do here is pause, ask me a few questions. So topsoil literally is just your layer of soil. There's typically twigs in it, sticks in it. You know, it's not something that you would think that you plant with, right? It's a scraping of the top layer of soil. It's not that red clay, so it's fertile, but it's got a lot of debris in it. Now, garden soil, that's all of that filtered out. Typically, it's got some great nutrients mixed in. It's probably got some fertilizer mixed in. Many times, garden soil actually has some water nodules mixed into that will actually help absorb water. It's very fine. It's very fluffy. It's very light. Okay. So topsoil is kind of rough, run-of-the-mill soil. Garden soil is for planting. Now, the crazy thing and wonderful thing is when you're creating a raised garden bed, you actually mix these because garden soil is so light and fluffy. If you pour it into one of these beds, the more it gets on, the more it's going to compact down. You're really not going to get that much depth of it. So you can actually add a lot of topsoil first. Now, I do like to use the strained topsoil, which means it's got a lot of those big sticks out of it. Because if you get just plain topsoil, like you get topsoil in a bag, you get topsoil delivered, I mean, you're going to have big sticks in it. Your dog's going to have a ball. So topsoil has got a lot of debris in it. Garden soil is just for planting. Now, if you're putting anything into a container, go with garden soil. Just go with garden soil. You don't really need the topsoil. If you're using a raised garden bed, you can lay down some sticks and some debris, like old shrubbery, right? If you cut down some shrubs, you can lay that in the bottom of it. Then layer topsoil on top of that. Those sticks and debris and everything will keep it higher, elevated, and then add garden soil on top. So every plant is a little bit different, okay? Fertilization, typically that means you're giving nutrients to these plants. In fertilizer, there's 3 numbers you want to look at on the back. There's 3 numbers that always tells you everything you need to know. And that first number is basically the amount of nitrogen that's in that. The higher that number, the more green things are. So if you're doing things like tomatoes, even though we think of tomatoes as being red, those plants are what? Very, very green and leafy. So it needs a lot of that information. The next number is like a phosphorus. That helps root growth. So think about that. Taller plants like corn, those tomatoes that I seem to love, they need really strong root growth so they don't fall over, right? So you look for numbers that are very high like that. And then that last number is just, it's calcium, it's overall health. So it depends on the plant. So if you're growing, say, pansies or lilies or something like that, you want something that's equally balanced in those numbers. And it will tell you this is great for flowering plants because that nitrogen is a little bit lower because there's a lot of blooms and everything is purples and pinks and pastel colors. Doesn't necessarily need a lot of green, right? And so you find the right fertilizer for the plant. Now, how often you use it depends on the plant as well. Typically, what I like to do, if you're planting anything, whether it's in a container or in a garden bed, go ahead and add fertilizer into that soil before you plant. That way that fertilizer is there, it's ready to go once that plant is put into the soil. After that, typically you're going to look at that anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the growing season. So, but you can fertilize throughout the growing season. But what I will tell you is when you fertilize, folks, make sure you're using something like a spreader, right? Don't just take a handout full of it and spread it around. That will actually lead to some of the roots being burned or too much fertilizer on one side. So spread it evenly. The second pitfall people make when it comes to garden beds and lawn beds. So the first one is either overwatering or underwatering. The second thing is improper fertilization. Not when they do it, but how they do it. Make sure that fertilizer is spread out. You don't want to put it all in one spot. And please, if you're using granular fertilizers, keep it off the leaves because in the direct sunlight, it'll actually burn through a leaf and cause the plant distress. And we don't want that. So it's okay to add sand. And we hear this a lot. Sand is great for grass growth, right? If your soil is like really heavy in texture, like if it's that topsoil, you know, the sand will actually help loosen up that soil and make it fluffy. Plants like fluffy soil. They don't like compact soil. Think about it. Roots are the same way. They want that sand in there so they can actually navigate through the soil. But if the soil is way too light in texture, then there's no water that's going to stick to it. So, yeah, sand is okay. But I will tell you this. If you're doing a good mixture of topsoil and garden soil, typically you don't need sand. Typically, okay? But if you're just using a large mixture, here's a great way of thinking. If you can grab the soil and you can squeeze it into a ball and it stays in a ball, you probably need a little bit of sand in there, okay? If you can grab the soil and it kind of expands back in your hand, it doesn't stay clumped up, then it's probably fine. Let's talk a little bit about creating your own garden bed. Now, I'm going to walk you through the steps and then I'm going to show you how to do a couple of things. There are several different things you can buy, and I can't go through all of them. But the great thing about creating your own raised bed is you can do it with a kit. You can do it with pieces of a kit. You can do it with leftover materials. That's why I love raised garden beds. So you can buy things like we talked about. These are these blocks, right? You can use any type of wood that just drops right in that. Again, if you're using any type of wood on a raised garden bed, I do recommend, say, cedar. It's probably going to cost you a little bit more. But here's a great thing. You can, if you have an old fence, or you can go buy fence planks, right? You can actually cut them down into size like this. Now, third pitfall people make when it comes to raised garden beds. They make them too wide. Why is that a problem? Because then you can't get to the plants in the center without stepping on plants to do it. So you really want to keep something about like this. And folks, I'll go ahead and show you. Little rule of thumb. Measure these out. About 4 feet is your max, right? About 4 feet is about as wide as you want to go. Now, you can go wider, but just know Joe warned you, you're going to be stepping on something as you're trying to water and feed these plants. So about 4 feet wide is your max, 3 feet in radius or 6 feet in diameter, so you can get to it if you do something round. Other things that you can use. People always talk about liners. Yeah, you should use a liner. It's not necessary. What a liner is going to do is going to prevent grass from growing up and weeds from growing up. Now, this is not a bad thing. Just know that grass and weeds are going to compete for those nutrients, right? So put down a liner. Now, what do you use for a liner? A couple things I want to recommend. You can use a weed blocker. Those are great. Don't use plastic. I don't like plastic, and here's why. Because it's going to keep that moisture in, right? And it's not going to allow it to drain out. And the second thing is, it's going to create a moisture barrier underneath that, which could get hot, cold, it could expand, it could actually damage your bed. So if you're using a cloth liner and you're using one of these raised garden bed kits, you may actually have to staple it to the side for it to stick there. You can use cardboard or old newspaper, a great way to recycle. And those are phenomenal. I love using cardboard because it's biodegradable. It provides the right amount of protection, but moisture absorption, it is phenomenal. Absolutely love it. Now, we always have people talking about critters and, what do I do about that? Something else you can do, when you put down your liner, you can get this little mesh, right? It's just a fabric mesh. It's very, you roll it out. You can put this on top of or underneath that barrier, and it's a deterrent. It's not going to hurt anybody. You know what's going to be able to get through this? Earthworms, because you want them, but rabbits, gophers, moles, nosy neighbors, they're not going to get through this stuff. This is a great little thing. And again, it's just very, very flexible. It's very easy to pull up and great use. And it's cheap. It's another way to use barrier protection when you're putting up your aligners. Now, y'all have heard me talk so much about soil. I'm going to do it again. So how much soil do you need? Here's a simple rule. You're going to take the length of your garden bed and you're going to take the width. If you listen to Joe, you're probably going to be dealing with something that's 4 foot by 4 foot, right? Or 6 feet in complete, diameter, and then the depth, length times width times depth. That will tell you how much soil you need. And I know everybody's saying right now, like, Joe, that sounds like a lot. If my thing is 4 foot deep, that's a lot of soil. Yeah, I told you. So just remember that. So what do you use? I use about 75% of that topsoil and about 25% screen compost or garden soil, depending on the plants that I want to use, okay? And that's for a raised garden bed. Now, remember what I told you. If you're using a container, you can go straight garden soil with that. Don't just use topsoil on that as well. The other thing is, once you're done with these beds, if you disassemble them like we do, that soil is left over, rake it out. It helps level out your yard, and it's great for the next year. You saw the video. My yard is prepped for that garden bed year after year after year. So, enough talk. Let me show you how easy it is to build a garden bed. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm John Stagg with Stagg Design, and today I'm going to show you how to build raised garden beds. Raised garden beds are a great solution, and you might think, why would you have to build a bed if you could just plant right in the soil? Well, there are a lot of reasons why raised garden beds are better. You can choose the soil that you put into the bed, so you can choose rich soil that's perfect for what you plan to plant, from vegetables to flowers to different things. And different soil is better for different types of plants. And also they look really nice. They're raised off the ground a little bit, so you don't have to crouch down as far. And We needed a raised garden bed that would fit in a pretty tight, small space. We have this flower bed here that's only about 2 feet wide at its widest. So we needed something that would that type of application, and we found a great option at Home Depot. So the tools you'll need for this project are a rubber mallet, a drill or screwdriver for a few screws that need to be attached, a shovel for the soil and for planting, and basically just a gardening set of gardening tools and a hose to water. The kit comes with all the parts and pieces that you'll need, so we've laid them out here. You'll also need soil, so we're going to use soil that's appropriate for the types of plants we're going to be planting today, and then all the plants you plan to put in your garden bed. Okay, before you start building, you're going to want to make sure your space is prepared. So we've done that already. It's all flat and cleaned up. We had to remove some leaves and rake some dirt around, but now it's flat and ready, and we're going to start building. Okay, so we've laid out all the pieces. I'm going to try and fit this in between the 2 fence posts, which required that I cut down a few of the long pieces and add a joint to the ends to allow them to fit. So it was about a 4-inch reduction in the length of the beds. So that's what's nice about buying a kit, is you can have most of the work done for you, and if you need to modify it, it's just a little bit of work to make it more of a custom fit. So now we're going to put the beds together, and it's a very, very simple installation. You basically use these as corner pieces and slip them right on and put them in place. So let's get to it. Okay, the last step is to add these decorative caps. I just drilled a quick pilot hole, and I'm now just gonna screw it in. Okay, we've completed our raised garden beds. I'm really excited about how they turned out. It was really fast and easy to assemble, as you saw. We're really excited about this rich soil that we've been able to add into the raised garden beds. If you compare it to the soil next to it, the existing soil wouldn't be great for growing vegetables or really productive flowers. So raised garden beds are a great option for a yard that has bad soil or compacted soil, or if you just want to add some extra style to your yard and make it more likely that your gardening will be fruitful. Shop the Home Depot for your gardening tools and supplies. This was a kit we got from Home Depot, and it was a great find.
That's it. I mean, that's really all there is. There's no big tool that you have to go out and buy, right? I mean, wheelbarrow, of course, watering can, shovel, of course. These are things that you need. Again, make sure that you have a shovel that actually is a spade tip, so you can actually dig into the soil. Yeah, you know, things to water the ground, gloves, of course. If you have something that, you know, maybe a larger area, you can rent the tools. You can rent these things. You can rent a tiller. You can rent a roller, hedge clipper. You can rent this auger right here. This auger actually uses the same battery as my lawnmower and as that edger. Those are things. And the cool thing is too, folks, many of the tools that I use, they're tools that I use all over my yard, not just for creating a garden bed. So a lot of cool tools out there. Okay. So that's really going to depend on where you live. Now, I will tell you, probably one of the hardest and easiest vegetables to grow are things like cucumbers. Cucumbers can grow just about anywhere there's sunlight and there's water. Cucumbers are great. They're also versatile because actually, if you grow a cucumber, if you grow a ton of cucumbers, then you can turn them into pickles. And there's a lot of different ways you can pickle them, but that's a totally different workshop. Maybe that's a great thing, how to pickle cucumbers. All right. So cucumbers are great, very easy. Another close associate to cucumbers are squash. Squash are great vegetables. Now, both squash and cucumbers, they have vines that like to grow up, okay? So if you've got a raised garden bed, you're going to have to put something in like this fencing like this. I just actually snip it and I cut it and I put it over the top, almost like, you know, a curved area like this. And those things can kind of grab onto it and grow. Those are phenomenal. Melons are pretty good. Just know that if you have extreme drought or a lot of wet conditions, those melons can kind of turn to mush. And then tomatoes are really good. Those are really good for different areas. So those are kind of like some of the top, some of the best to grow in certain areas. It just does depend on your type of climate. You know, peas, radishes, carrots, all those things, they grow underground. So anything that kind of grows underground, I mean, unless you have permafrost and you live in the frozen tundra, all of those things are going to grow great as well. So compost is organic material that has been collected that is decomposing into some type of like peat moss or organic residue. Okay, what is it? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Okay, so guess what? That banana peel that you throw out, in about a week and a half, it's going to start turning into something kind of really, really mushy, right? And you kind of squeeze it in your hands. That's compost. Okay, it's organic material. Mulch is typically ground up wood. That's what it is. It's mulch. Now, don't get me wrong. You can actually use mulch in garden beds. In fact, I highly recommend it. We'll talk about seedlings in just a second. But if you put down mulch on top of your garden bed, especially after your seeds have sprouted, not before, but after they've sprouted, it acts as a great barrier and protector of your plants, flowers, garden, everything. So mulch is a ground up wood. Now, you can get mulch that has dye in it. You can get the black mulch, the brown mulch, the red mulch, and stuff like that. If you're going to put down mulch, typically I do recommend, if you're going to use a dyed mulch, maybe put it out before. You don't want to water it anything for a few days because that dye could run off, may cause some plants some distress. Just use the natural mulch. And then there's cedar mulch, which guess what? It's made out of cedar. A little bit more expensive, but again, same thing, acts as a barrier. Okay, so sun is sun. Partial sun literally means it needs some sunlight, but it does not need sunlight all day long. Think about sunlight in terms of 8 hours, okay? If you have something that says it needs full sun, it needs a lot of sunlight. Not 8 hours, but it needs at least 6 hours of sunlight. Shade, partial shade, well, that means shade means no, think of shade meaning the opposite, no sun. It's just light surrounding the area. If it's completely shaded, it's going to be fine. If it needs partial shade, it's going to need elements of sunlight, okay? Not hours upon hours, but it's going to need some smattering of sunlight. So think about it this way. The sun, very rarely anywhere on the earth, does it go directly straight up, straight over, and straight down. Kind of comes in at an angle. So you want to look and see where that is. So if you have a tree, and maybe on this side of the tree, in the morning, it's plenty of sun, but in the afternoon, it doesn't get any sun. That's partial shade. That's exactly what that is. So think of it in terms of hours and go backwards from there. And I got to tell you, unless you live in a very densely wooded area, even shade really is still getting a couple of hours of sunlight. Believe it or not, what you really need to be concerned about is plants that need, a lot of sunlight. They need a lot of sunlight. Plants that say partial shade, things like that, that literally means they don't have to be exposed to sunlight all day long. So you can plant them just about anywhere. Great question. I told you I was going to talk to you some seedlings, choosing some plants. Let me jump into some of all these already. So when we talk about light, what are the conditions where you live? What do you want? Full sun. What did I say? 6 or more hours of direct sunlight a day. Partial shade. 3, maybe 6 hours, but 3 really. Shade does less than 3 hours of sun per day. And then let's talk about size. Size does matter when it comes to plants. So a lot of gardeners get really excited and they pack in their flower beds. Here. You're putting a lot of flower beds. And like the grass I told you earlier, those plants compete for minerals, for nutrients. And one plant's going to overtake the other. So again, keep them. There's a little tiny tag, and it will tell you how big it will get. You got to be a good parent to your plants. You see how big it's going to get, and then you need to plant it with that in mind. Now, I know that first time you plant it, you're like, it looks really sparse. Only have 3 plants here. But when those plants get 3 feet tall and start blending each other, you'll be happy you listened to me. So size is key. And then finally, this is a big deal. Do not plant until the last frost date for your area. Now, I'm from the South, and my grandmother had an old wives' tale. She said, do not plant until after Easter Sunday. That's what she said. And because Easter kind of always kind of rotates, she said, until after Easter Sunday, don't plant anything. And it's a good rule of thumb, especially in the South, because if you have a hard frost and you've planted, you're probably going to lose that plant as well. If you want color, get spring flowers such as pansy and primrose. Those are great. And anything that needs a bulb, remember, those had to be planted in the fall. So think forward if you want something like that. Now, seeds versus seedlings. I love dealing with seeds. You got to start seeds indoors. Here's a couple of quick hacks for you. Everybody's got one of these, all right? You've used some paper towels, you use some toilet papers, you got this little tiny cardboard roll. You already know how much I love cardboard. Take some scissors. You take that cardboard roll and you cut them into something like this. These are great little seed planters. So you have something like this. Have a tray, Tupperware dish, I don't care. You put soil, potting soil, garden soil, into these little things, and then you drop the seeds right in and plant them and leave them inside. Seedlings need to be inside, okay? That is a great way for them to start off. So they're wonderful, and they're cheap, right? You can start things from seed, and there's a sense of accomplishment. A couple other things you can do. I love this particular method. Maybe you're not good about watering. Maybe you're wondering, do I overwater, do I underwater? Take an old plastic bottle, right? Okay, cut it in half. Take an old sock or a piece of cloth and just drill a hole in the bottom right here. Fill this with water. Put your soil, plant your seed about 3/4 of the way up. Put it right there. That acts as a wick, and it will automatically provide enough water for your plant as it's growing. Then once you transplant those seeds outside, they've started sprouting, which you can do. Same thing. Take plastic bottle, cut it in half. Take this, put it over the seedling. It protects it from birds. It protects it from things, and it acts like a little greenhouse. Amazing. I love this. It's just really cool things that you can do. Now, if you're not patient, okay, easy thing you can do is buy transplants. You can buy whatever you want. You can transplant those. You don't need, any special skills or anything like that. You just buy them, you plant them in the soil, and it is ready to go. So we kind of mix and match on those things as well. A couple other things. Mulch can help control weeds. It's great. It also helps retain moisture. And just in case you're caught off guard and there's an early or a late frost, mulch can actually help protect the plants. Now, we do get questions all the time. Should I use rubber mulch? Should I use natural mulch? Rubberized mulch is going to be a little bit more expensive. It works. It's a weed barrier, right? And you can get it in different colors, and those colors are typically not going to fade. If you do get the colored mulch, just know that can stay in walkways, driveways, things like that. So you don't want to water it too much beforehand. But I love mulch. People also ask, oh my goodness, but mulch, it attracts bugs, and I've heard it brings termites. No, it does attract bugs, but so do your plants. And bugs are part of the ecosystem. So there are some good bugs you can actually introduce into your ecosystem to help alleviate some of those other things. Plus, you can plant things like lavender, which actually keep away mosquitoes and some of the bad bugs. You can add a lot of different things in there as well. Now, watering the plants. You've heard me talk about this. The soil around any type of plants, whether it's a seedling, whether it's a transplant growth, you got to keep the soil loose. I see so many people, they plant a plant and they just pack that soil down. No, keep it a little bit loose. Remember, we talked about adding sand if need be, and then the water can kind of seep through. If you pour water on your soil and it beads up, that soil is too compacted. The best time to water your plants, just like water your grass, early in the morning before it gets too hot, because that way the water has time to soak in before it evaporates. Okay. If you have the ability to do this, group plants with similar water needs together if possible. Buy a soaker hose. You can make a soaker hose. All a soaker hose is just a garden hose, little tiny holes in it. You turn it on, and it just kind of slowly waters out as well. There's a lot of different ways you can water it. In fact, that may need to be another workshop as well. You saw me creating these different types of garden beds. Same thing. You can do spiral beds. You can do these Zen beds. You can do pathways. You can do vertical tower gardens. Again, something like this is a great way to do that. You can literally take one of these planters that I showed you earlier. I did this for my grandmother several years back. You take something like this, fill it with concrete, right? Fill it, mix concrete, take something like this, you put it straight in it, right? Then you pour the soil in top of that, just a little bit of soil, and this holds this entire thing. And then you just hang those planters that I showed you that you can make out of all different things, right? You can actually just hang planters like this on that mesh and have a great vertical garden. Have fun with it, folks. You know, people always ask, well, how do I do this? How do I do this? Your imagination is your limit when it comes to creating a raised garden bed or any type of garden bed. Now, what I do recommend is, using similar types of plants. So for our tomato plants, I strain the soil because I try to get some of the roots out of it because those root systems go really, really deep. And then I repot tomato plants. Now, it's not like I replant, Better Boys and things like that. I kind of mix up or cherry tomatoes, things like that. I do mix them up. But yes, you absolutely can use that. And here's another great thing. If you have a plant and maybe you were just a little bit, paying attention to it and it died, you can pull that plant out, shake the soil off the roots and reuse that soil. Reuse that soil because it still has a lot of nutrients in it. And that plant at one time thrived. Don't just dump it out. See, so many people like just throw the whole thing out. No, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? You can reuse that soil and get some tremendous plants as well. So, folks, we've covered so much, talked about garden beds and setting up garden beds and plants for gardens and caring for your plants and how not to care for your plants. We covered a lot. Remember, we've got resources available for you that you can actually download. And I want you to go out there and have fun. There's no pressure to this, right? You have fun. You've got to experiment. You've got to have patience. You got to plan a little bit. You got to have some practice. But most of all, you've got to have fun doing this. This is definitely something that I enjoy doing year in and year out, and I hope you do as well. That being said, we've got a lot of other Homeowner 101 and DIY workshops. We want you to join us in those. You can always ask us at workshopslive@homedepot.com to get the answers that you need. And we want to help you, the doer, get more done. So on behalf of Hired Team at Homeowner 101, folks, we want to thank you for being with us today. I got to go get planning. We hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.